Well, here we are. It's another Confessions podcast. Thank you for downloading it. This week's convivial collection of astonishing anecdotes, new staff, you see, include soliciting a sunbathing shop assistant, a white wine whinge, a teddy trauma, and a sneaky psalm switcheroo. Let's see who you forgive. Who do we have here? This is Morris sending in tonight's tale. Keep Psalm and Carry On, you remember, is the title. And I think, as I mentioned to Rebecca a while back, I think this might be how Tufty Bumfluff got his name.
Really?
So it's sort of a prequel to last week's story.
I say.
Anyway, dear Father Simon and the quite considerable collective, my confession takes me back to the early 70s. The scene is an all-boys grammar school in the Midlands. The headmaster was an ex-military man who liked things to run precisely to schedule. Punctuality was everything. If the school clock was as much as a second off the BBC Pips, it would be corrected. He had so many of the traits of the John Cleese character in the film Clockwise, I feel sure it must have been based on him. The music teacher, however, had none of these traits. He had long hair. He didn't wear a tie. And on at least one occasion, he was seen to be wearing the devil's cloth. Jeans.
Right,
He's
really?
wearing jeans.
That's what the devil wears. Apparently.
The devil wears Prada. No.
Yeah.
His classes were generally good fun and, frankly, ill-disciplined. It was the lack of discipline that made them fun. It was just the sort of class that us fourth formers really enjoyed. One day, however, we must have gone a bit too far because the laid-back, long-haired, flowery-shirted, guitar-playing dude suddenly threw a wobbly and took it out on me and my best friend by awarding a detention. Not just any detention, but a Saturday detention. Well, this was unheard of and, frankly, outrageous behaviour. We didn't deserve that. Physics, maths and RE, we all knew that those subjects... You know, if you misbehaved, then you would definitely get a detention and maybe the odd dreaded Saturday. But in music, we thought there was no way that this hippie... Now, I don't know if it's Sobrani smoking music teacher, it's Sobrani. Remember there was those cocktail-coloured cigarettes?
The licorice, well, they look like licorice cigarettes,
right?
don't they? Yeah.
They're Russian. Remember these?
Yeah,
Matt?
but they had the
from your
gold
what?
tips, didn't they? The gold filters.
There you go.
Okay.
That's the word.
Apparently.
Anyway, this hippie Sobrani smoking music teacher would actually report us, but he did, and the year master, another military man, took great delight in letting us and our parents know. My father was not best pleased, but my friend had his bike taken from him for a whole month by his dad. Well, revenge would have to be swift. We had noticed, as had everybody else for that matter, that the music teacher often did not make the beginning of morning assembly. He would just tiptoe down the cloisters and slide into position behind the piano, often just in the nick of time before the headmaster announced that the hymn was about to be sung. The headmaster, did I mention he was a military man, ran the assembly. Everything was organised precisely, and he would always have the hymn numbers to be sung that week typed out and placed on his lectern. A plan was hatched over lunch. The next morning we were unusually very early at school, and as we made our way to assembly, found it difficult not to laugh at what was about to happen. At precisely 0900 hours, the assembly hall door open, and the headmaster led the year masters on his daily march to the stage. We looked at each other, we couldn't resist a smile, as we noted that, as predicted, the music teacher had not made it on time. The assembly dragged on with announcements and readings and other mundane matters, when suddenly there he was, skulking down the darkened cloister and creeping into position behind the piano. He was just in time too, as a moment later the headmaster stood up and announced that we were all going to sing Psalm 24. The music teacher calmly turned the page to his music and realised that the sheet music was not there. Instead, he found the music to Mama, We're All Crazy Now by Slade, a big hit with us boys back then. Now, we had hoped that he would try to fit one tune to the words of another, as they do on the radio, but no, he quickly rifled through the other music in front of him, all too aware that the headmaster was waiting for him, as was the whole school. He quickly turned round and snatched a hymn book from the first year in front of him and tried to play from that, but the hymn book had no music in it, and if you remember, psalms had rather tricky, chanty-type tunes, impossible to play and sing with music, and with no chance at all if you make it up from the hymn book. He should have stuck with Slade. It was awful. It was akin to something Les Dawson would have played. We were in tears of laughter, and that set the rest of the school off as well. First the lads around me, and then it spread in a ripple down the lower classes, until pretty much the whole school was on the verge of having an accident. Mrs. Winterbottom, the divinity teacher, was actually crying. Mr. Pringle, the games teacher, made a dash for the door, either about to be sick or reveal himself to be laughing too. Meantime, a quick-thinking first year was trying to hum it to the music teacher. I was doubled up. I couldn't watch it it anymore. My belly was actually aching with laughter. The head was going purple with rage and roared, "Silence!" The hush was immediate. No laughter, no piano, just snorting noises from my mate as he tried to keep a straight face. The headmaster quickly marched us out of assembly, leading the year masters, who were clearly ready to pounce on anybody that dared so much as snigger. The door slammed behind them, and the uproar continued where it left off. It was the talk of school for the rest of the day. The next morning there was an air of expectancy at morning assembly. We moved into the hall to find that someone was already at the piano. Someone with short hair and wearing a tie.
Oh dear.
It couldn't be, could it? Yes, it actually was. Barely recognisable, but it was him. Early, and with the correct music in front of him, with a tufty haircut. Nobody ever knew it was us that had hidden his music and swapped it for Slade. And I had actually forgotten all about it until I recently saw a tribute to Les Dawson on the television, and the memories came back. So I seek forgiveness not from the hippie music teacher who got what he deserved, but to the headmaster for ruining his morning assembly. Had we been found out, I have no doubt he would have expelled us. But he was dangerously close to having a heart attack that morning. I beg forgiveness for me and my maid for our devious and scheming behaviour. We did the Saturday detention, Father Simon, and I have to say that it all felt worthwhile and rather justified. This Saturday detention lark is quite a fruitful area, I think. So we'll take any other detention themed tunes. Winding up the heads in assembly, obviously not to be encouraged because it's a very bad thing. Anyway, maybe he is Tufty Bumfluff, and that's where it happened. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
I thought you were going to say that he'd been sacked and replaced by a man with short hair and a tie. But thank goodness he wasn't sacked for that, because that wouldn't have been a sackable offence.
Yeah, and I don't think that story would have got on.
Probably not. I'm not sure whether the music teacher really deserved that, but on the other hand, it was a great prank. I mean, it was so simple and so effective. And I think the head teacher, I mean, for goodness sake, having one assembly ruined, I don't think there's any problem with that, and it gave everyone a big laugh, so you're completely forgiven.
I would quite like to hear Psalm 24 sung to Mama We're All Crazy
Yes,
Now.
please.
I'm sure our talented
Slade.
producer can
absolutely.
put that together
In a
before the
matter-
end of the show.
In a matter of minutes.
She's not even listening.
No.
She's listening at PM. What do you think, Brother Matt?
Well, I love the movie Clockwise. What a great John Cleese movie that was. Superb. I've got it in for this music teacher, though, with his slapdash attitude to
He's got
timekeeping.
Sobrani Russian cigarettes.
Yeah, and his Russian cigarettes with licorice in them, and his cocking a snook at the system. Well, it turns out you've been broken by the system, and you're going to have to get a haircut and wear a tie. Unlucky, pal. I say definitely forgiven. Frankly, it was just giving the head teacher the excuse to bring this music teacher into line with his counterculture ways.
Send in your tale, by the way. We all know you've got one, and you've been keeping it, and the family's been waiting for you to send it in. It's confessions@bbc.co.uk, and the podcast is available at the end of the week. Father Simon and the Holy, Happy and Helpful Huddle. This is from Phil, by the way. Thank you for this. My stomach turns over and over and over again every time I remember this humiliating episode from a few years ago. And so it is time to prostrate myself before you and ask for forgiveness for my disgraceful behaviour. My tale harks back to the heady days of 2009. I was working for an IT company and I lived in the north, but their head office was in central London. I often needed to visit head office on a regular basis, and one day my boss, Cliff, who lived on the western outskirts of London, invited me to stay with his family overnight at their house on one of my sojourns in the capital. Obviously, I was hesitant and nervous about the putative arrangement, but I really had no option, and so I squeaked, "OK." Soon I found myself on my way to West London. Cliff introduced me to his wife, Norma, and his delightful brood of kids. It was a jolly and cheerful family, and the house was full of noise and laughter. We partook of a nice meal that evening, and then I was plied generously with drink. I had not the slightest idea of the impending nightmare and shame I was about to unleash upon this decent family. Norma eventually bade us good night, she'd drunk enough, and retired to her bed. And because I was no match for Cliff and his imbibing habits, I soon gave up and said good night, or as clearly as I could manage, because I'd had a few, and I ascended the stairs. I grabbed my toiletry bag from my room and tiptoed across the landing towards the bathroom. Before I got there, I passed an open door. Glancing inside, I saw a bed with many soft toys piled up on it. Intrigued, I looked closer, and sure enough, there were about 30 soft toys, all of them fashioned after different cartoon characters, teddy bears, and assorted animals. It had a few beers by this time. I was so amused by this display that I went in.
What?
And got closer and closer to each animal, and eventually I had my face extremely close to them. I started twisting my face into the features on the faces of each soft toy, just for a bit of fun, you understand, and also making the noises that I thought each soft animal would make.
No.
Ranging from grunting or roaring to monkey sounds and even a "Hello, Pluto" for Minnie Mouse. I went along the rows of funny faces, one by one, gurning like mad, having a great time. I arrived at one face that made me pause. It looked a little like a Cabbage Patch doll, with eyes wide open and mouth forming a perfect O.
Oh, dear.
No matter, I thought, and almost nose to nose I pulled my best face yet, and then moved on to the next toy. Something made me return a few minutes later to the Cabbage Patch doll, and I'm sure you probably realised the source of my huge embarrassment. It suddenly dawned on me with a rush of red-hot blood to my head that this was indeed not a soft toy, but the face of Norma, my boss's wife. She, it turned out, had a separate room full of soft, fluffy animals. Who was to know? I froze for a long time, seemingly pulling an identical face to the Cabbage Patch doll. Then I turned and ran out of the room in a panic, saying, "Oh, no, 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 no," in a shrill... "Oh, no, 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 no," holding my head in embarrassment as I went. I think, as a general rule, if you're in someone else's house, don't impersonate the fluffy animals. In the bathroom, I gargled, scrubbed and shook myself down and then retreated to my room. A sleepless night ensued when I finally went downstairs in the morning. The bedroom door was closed. Cliff, my boss, was sitting in the kitchen. "There's your toast," he said bluntly. "There's your coffee," he barked, and then lapsed into silence. Obviously, he'd been told the whole story about this gurning idiot who upset his wife with his complete stupidity. But I needed to try something, so I told him that when I was a very small child, I'd fallen into a vat of teddy bears and toys at famous toy factories, and every time I got tired and emotional, I tried to work my trauma through by talking to whichever toys I could find. "I had done it before, but never with such disastrous results," I said. Remarkably, Cliff said he believed me and would explain this to Norma, who understandably had not come down to breakfast because she was still upset. He might have forgiven me, but I was never invited back to stay with his family. There's a surprise. Therefore, it's with heavy heart and a light head that I throw myself upon the tender mercies of the collective and beg forgiveness for turning a happy, joy-filled family into an angry, silent and shocked bunch in the space of a few seconds. I realise I don't deserve any sympathy, but I have to say that whenever I see a soft toy now, I feel ever so queasy, but I don't talk to it. Well, Phil, it's a strange thing, the way the alcohol
quite surreal, that story.
Yeah. So, yes, well, it could have been worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
It does raise a number of questions. I mean, how much had he had to drink exactly?
Well, I think he'd had quite a lot.
How can somebody mistake Norma for a Cabbage Patch doll? I don't understand.
Well,
I mean,
you haven't met
how
Norma.
large are Cabbage Patch dolls' faces? For a
How
start?
big was
I
Norma?
thought they were quite small.
Well, maybe Norma
he
was
is pretty drunk. I mean,
yeah, okay. And also, why did Norma have a bed full of stuffed animals? That's also quite strange for an adult, isn't
That's
it?
true.
It is Norma's fault, that's right.
Well, I
Yes.
also think the story he told about falling into a vat of teddy bears. I mean, you know, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Just say, "I had a bit too much to drink and I made a mistake. I went into the wrong room."
you
a
could be
vat
yeah.
of teddy bears. When did teddy bears ever find themselves in a vat?
In a teddy
There are
bear.
so many questions
In a teddy bear factory.
in that story.
Where's the vat?
I actually can't forgive you, Phil. I'm sorry.
Brother Matthew.
There is a certain etiquette when staying in other people's houses.
Just don't ever stay in the boss's house. Just don't.
No, number one, why are you
Cam.
staying in the boss? That's never happened. That's definitely not a thing. The boss wants you to know, don't stay at the boss's house. No, I'll go to the
B&B
lodge.
down the road,
Well,
I
yeah,
think.
down the road, thanks very much. I'm not going to be staying in your house. Number two, if you are staying in the boss's house and you pass a bedroom with the door open, don't go in that bedroom. Only go in your bedroom and the loo.
And if you do see
And that's it.
a whole bunch of fluffy toys, don't impersonate them.
No, but probably don't worry about that because you're not going in the
I don't get in the
bedroom
room
in the first place. I love the vat story. The vat's the killer part of this story because that's the point where you go, what? You fell in a vat
Well, Cliff,
full
it
of
worked
teddy
for-
bears?
it worked for Cliff.
Amazing. I am going to forgive just for the vat bit, but all the rest of it, what on earth is going on there?
Yes, it's another drive time confession. Tonight's comes from listener Susan. Thank you, Susan. Dear Father Simon and the Considerate Collective. Are you feeling considerate, Matt?
Very, always, yeah.
Well, I
yeah.
don't think that's true.
Yes, no, I think so. I think that is true.
What if it's an artsy
Oh,
based?
well, apart from art students, obviously, yeah.
Feeling considerate, Rebecca?
I am, yes, actually.
You're a pushover. Susan says, my confession takes us back to the summer of 1988. It was a Tuesday, as I remember, just after a very wet August bank holiday. It had been a typical bank holiday weekend. Rain, rain and more rain. So you can understand my disappointment when I arrived at work on this Tuesday, and summer seemed to have arrived at last. The whole of the country was bathed in glorious sunshine. It was a fantastic hot day with just a little breeze, the perfect day for lounging around and doing nothing. But that, unfortunately, was not to be. I had to work. I was to be stuck in my stuffy office on the second floor of a high street building with no air conditioning and a pile of folders that I had to get through for the next 8 hours. It was sweltering and I was getting frustrated. I could see everyone else happily going around their business through my window, oblivious to me working away, wishing I was outside enjoying the sun as well. Families enjoying ice creams, couples walking hand in hand, sipping their cold drinks and smiling, and dog walkers laughing and chatting with each other. We get the gist, I think. It might have been more bearable for me if my office windows actually opened, but no, they were clamped shut. Now, I'm a patient and understanding sort of person most of the time, Father Simon, but you can no doubt imagine the frustration I felt when I saw the woman who worked in the laundrette opposite bringing out a chair and sitting outside the shop door in the sun. Jealousy with a capital J. OMG, that's what I was thinking. If I couldn't sit out in the sun while working, I was going to make darn sure that no one else could either. Susan sounds nice, doesn't she?
Yeah.
I pulled out the yellow pages and looked up the number for the laundrette. And yes, you guessed it, I phoned the shop. Up got the lady, went into the laundrette to answer the call, and I hung up. Out she came again and settled back into her seat, slapping on the sun lotion, now with an ice-cold drink in her hand. She seemed happy and content. So I phoned again. She hauled herself up and she walked somewhat wearily into the shop. Just as she got to the phone, I hung up again. She returned to her seat. How many times could I keep this going? Well, I phoned and up she got, a little wearily again, and I hung up again. She came back out looking a little bit confused and checking her surroundings, but she never once looked up at my office on the second floor opposite her. How many times could I do this? It was funny, as I'm sure the nation is going, don't think so. She sat back down, but was now sitting on the edge of her seat, half in the shop and half outside, just in case. This time I waited just a little bit longer before calling. Just at the point she closed her eyes and relaxed into her sunbathing. Yep, I called again. She got up somewhat gingerly, see yesterday's homework sucks for explanation, and walked rather slowly into the shop, and after a few steps, I hung up again. It took a little longer for her to come back out, but she did, and this time she picked up the chair and went back into the shop to sit by the phone, no doubt. My work was done, and I suddenly felt much better about my working day. Every now and again, we try and find a confession that no one is going to forgive. Yeah. And this is one of them. A week later, I went into the laundrette to hand some dry cleaning in and was greeted with a cheery smile from the aforementioned shop assistant. Yes, the lady who had annoyed me the week before. I said I needed the items back as soon as possible for a wedding that weekend, and she could not have been more helpful. She told me she would rush my order through and have it back the next day for no extra charge. This made me feel a little guilty for my actions the Tuesday before. Then I noticed that she was holding her stomach somewhat gently, and I asked if she was okay.
Oh, no.
She said she'd been recovering from some painful surgery, a hernia actually, and wasn't sure that she should be at work at all. Moving around, getting up and down could be a little painful. The stitches still pulled, she said.
Dear.
I tried to kid myself that I was been really looking after her well-being that day, as the sun's rays can be very harmful. But I knew actually I'd just been evil and cruel, and I hope I didn't make the recovery any longer than it needed to be. Well, actually, I think you probably did. Anyway, Father Simon, I asked for forgiveness from the lovely shop assistant for being so jealous, spoiling her day in the sun and making her stitches ache. To make things worse, I think that was the only good day of the summer that year. I think, that Susan is just a little bit self-obsessed. I think it's all about her. And that's a shocking story, because that woman at the laundrette, clearly she was a delightful person, and she was made to suffer many times over. I think I know how the nation is going to speak, but let's see what Sister Rebecca says.
Well, that was really, really mean. Jealousy brings out some very strange behaviour in some people. I mean, Also, if she wanted to get out into the sun, she should have just concentrated on getting through her piles of work rather than wasting time phoning this woman.
There's a moral outrage.
On the other hand, the woman, I suppose, should have realised that it was some kind of prank caller after the third or fourth call, so she should have ignored it, but that doesn't mean that she's to blame. So, no, I'm not going to forgive you, Susan.
Well, let's see if you can find a nice angle on this
Well,
one.
no one likes working in the sunny weather. What I can't understand about it is she spent quite a lot of time on this, and you think, what you could have been doing is sitting outside in the sun instead. Why not just do that? Why, instead of trying to find her number in the phone book and then calling her every 2 minutes and then hanging up when she's about to get to the phone, why not just sit out in the sun and enjoy that instead? But I have to say, if I was in the laundrette woman's shoes, I'd be thinking, who's calling a laundrette? No one's calling the laundrette. If you've got stuff, you go and pick it up. So unplug the phone. So actually, I am going to forgive, and I'm going to be the only person in the nation that does, because there are no redeeming features for Susan here, but I'm going to be the only person that forgives, and it's all her fault. It's the laundrette woman's fault. Should have unplugged the phone.
Because you like being contrary.
There you go.
There are notes being passed amongst the collective. Novice Nigel is passing a note. Read out the note, please.
Don't read out.
No,
Pass it here.
No.
Pass it here, Barden.
that could...
Have it back, Barden. 100 lines.
See me in the Mayo study much later.
We'll put that on Facebook. No, we won't.
No, we won't.
Anyway, Novice Nigel is in, and there's a sort of a food thing here with this confession. There are quite a few food-based confessions, and they come into confessions@bbc.co.uk, and they're always very welcome, and some of them turn up on a Thursday. This one from Sheila. Thank you very much indeed. Sheila, take a bow. Here we go. Dear Father Simon, my confession relates back to the late 1990s. My job regularly took me away from home and often involved staying away in hotels. This was a cold, wet November, and I left home about 5:30 a.m. to drive to a place just outside Oldham. I made the long journey from my home in Northampton, did a long, hard day's work, and then headed off to the centre of Oldham, where I'd booked a hotel for 2 nights. It was dark, it was rainy. The journey that should have been 15 minutes ended up as 45 minutes. I could see the hotel from the ring road, but I couldn't find the exit to take me where I needed to be. Anyway, I got over it. Absolutely knackered, I checked into the hotel, and too tired to go down for dinner, decided to eat from the room service menu. From the 4 choices available, I chose, quote, the authentic chicken tikka masala with fragrant herbs, succulent tomatoes and fresh cream, with naan bread and palau rice, cooked by our 5-star rated chef from Mumbai. What do you think, Nigel? Sound all right?
That sounds remarkable.
Okay. Hey, we'll see, shall we?
Yeah.
As with most hotels, the wine was extraordinarily priced, particularly by the glass, so I decided to order a bottle of Pinot Grigio, as I would be there the following evening, and it worked out considerably cheaper. 20 minutes promised for the meal to arrive was actually 1 hour 40, by which time I was struggling to keep my eyes open. When it finally arrived, I poured a glass of wine and took a couple of mouthfuls of what turned out to be an authentic, lukewarm, microwaved TV dinner and decided to give up and go to bed. I carefully poured the wine back into the bottle and secured the top with a bright red napkin which had come up with my dinner. I placed the bottle back on the table for the following evening. The next day was another hectic one at work, but I kept myself going with the thought of a long, hot soak in the bath with a large glass of wine on the side. I got back to my room and went straight into the bathroom to set the bath running. I poured in the bubble bath / shampoo / soap / detergent, it all did the same thing, and took the glass from the shelf to pour my well-deserved glass of wine. However, the only thing on the table was the TV remote and the room service menu. The entire bottle of wine had gone. I searched around, although there were a very limited number of places in a hotel room that a bottle could be concealed, in a budget hotel room, as you can imagine. But realising it must have been removed by the cleaners, I rang down to reception to ask for a replacement. I was greeted by the most obnoxious receptionist, who made it very clear that she didn't believe me. In her broad Lancastrian accent...
Oh, yes, here we go.
No.
Looking forward to this.
Hang on.
And then the emails afterwards.
Hang on.
Guess where I'm from? Oh, come on now, Simon. Come on,
I was greeted by the most obnoxious receptionist, who said, in an accent which I couldn't quite place,
Right.
Are you sure you didn't drink it all? She asked. No, it was full, I said. But surely you must have tried some, otherwise why order it? Well, I was too tired, having had to wait nearly an hour for my meal. I'll speak to the kitchen and ring you back. She slammed the phone down. Well, really. Waiting for a call back, I didn't dare get into the bath, but after 30 minutes, the disinfectant bubble bath had died. She hadn't rung, so I rang back down. "Kitchen will sort it, ring them," she said.
What?
Again in her indeterminate accent from anywhere. I rang the kitchen, having selected the world-famous succulent burger, 100% British beef, cooked to your liking, from the menu, and asked about my replacement bottle of wine. "Oh, it's you," they said. "We're only prepared to give you half a bottle, as the first one was opened." "But it was full," I said. "Half or nothing," they said. Wow. "OK, half a bottle of Pinot." "We only do one white in half bottles. It'll have to be that."
Brilliant.
And they hung up again. By now, my bath was cold. There was only football on the telly, and when my meal arrived, my burger was about as succulent as the white napkin covering the tray. More significantly, as I poured the wine from a dirty bottle with the label peeling off, I saw a brown, cloudy liquid appearing in the glass. It smelt like vinegar, tasted worse. I decided that they must have taken all the leftover dregs of unfinished wine to make up my half bottle. Other less charitable options did occur to me. Unable to face any more telephone conversations, I decided to put pen to paper, or in this case, napkin, as I spread the crisp white napkin out on the table, began to write down my thoughts. Having poured out my thoughts in a big, bold, black lettering on their food, their service, their honesty, their soap, their feeble shower, the used paper handkerchiefs in the bin, the fact that you couldn't get to them from the ring road, and anything else I could think of, I then said that I hoped they would enjoy this wine as much as they clearly enjoyed my other bottle. I carefully folded the napkin and addressed it to the hotel manager. Brackets, Attila the Hun, close brackets. I then placed it on top of the tray and put the tray outside in the corridor for collection.
Woo!
Well, the next morning I started to pack my things together, ready to check out, and went over to the window to see if it was raining. As I pulled the curtain back, I caught a glimpse of red out of the corner of my eye. I turned to focus fully, and there, tucked in the corner of the window, was a bottle of Pinot Grigio, with a red napkin in the top, and a note from the cleaner. She left it there to keep it cool. I rushed to the door to see if the tray was still outside, but it had gone. Do I tell them? No. Do I leave it here? No. I placed the bottle in the side of my holdall, wedging it up tight with a red napkin folded over to hide my shame. As I checked out, I was convinced that everyone was staring at my bag and could see the red napkin, even if it was hidden. I managed to get through the doors and out to my car before driving off into the distance, feeling like one of the great train robbers. So I need forgiveness, not for the po-faced receptionist who was extremely rude, or the chef, who was not only rude but couldn't cook and couldn't get meals served on time, even in a half-empty hotel. But I do ask forgiveness from the person who cleaned my room and who had thought they were being helpful by moving my wine into the coolest part of the room, and for any interrogation that they might have had to face as a result of my complaints, which you can imagine would probably be none at all, because it didn't sound like the hotel that would bother. Sheila, thank you very much indeed for your tale. I think she was being quite creative, and I think most people would have been a bit stroppy at this point. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
Yeah, I think she'd worked herself up into a bit of a state, hadn't she, because of the bad food, the fact she'd had to wait so long for the food, for the curry on the first night, and the ring road. Attila the Hun, now that was going quite far, I think. Yeah, it's a really good confession, actually. I'm torn about this one because, I don't know. I mean, who in their right mind would have gone down and said, actually, I know I called you Attila the Hun, but, you know, in fact, I found the wine. I don't think anyone would.
The rest of the hotel was clearly rubbish.
And the rest of the hotel was rubbish, yeah, but that doesn't mean that she should have been so rude. So I think, no, I'm not going to forgive you.
Cutting to the chase there. Let's see what novice Nigel makes of it.
I think the fact she had to wait 1 hour 40 minutes for how she didn't drink the wine before then, I don't know. 1 hour 40 minutes for the curry, which was terrible when it came.
You get the wine, you wait an hour and 40 minutes. You still don't drink it.
I know, I staggered that. It's just me. But also the food was terrible on both occasions. And even customers are always right, so they obviously didn't believe her, which was fair enough, but down on the reception. But they should have been. I just think it sounds appalling.
Is it likely that she'd have got dregs? That sounds like dregs, doesn't it?
It does sound.
The wine that she
yeah. But they said it was in half bottles, didn't they? So whether she got a half bottle that was off, or half bottles are always more difficult to keep anyway. Always buy magnums if you can. That's my adage in life. So Sheila, I definitely
take that wisdom home, kids.
I forgive you, and winemakers like making magnums as well. So Sheila, yeah, I definitely forgive you, and because the rest of the place just sounded pants.
Yes, absolutely right. But let's see.
I am fed up with hotels taking the mickey with nonsense prices for room service, £2.50 for a bag of nuts, and then 15 quid for the Wi-Fi, which which doesn't work, and then having a receptionist talk to me like that on the phone. I am not a violent man, but if someone talked to me like that and made me wait an hour and 40 minutes for one bottle of wine and a passable chicken curry, I would not be accountable for my actions. So I'm going to go full square behind Sheila on this one. And you have to ask, what's the cleaner doing moving your bottle of wine? Well, you don't move me wine. Okay. I don't need it near the window. If I wanted it near the window, I'd have put it on the sill. Leave my wine where it is.
Well, that's it. Don't forget, you have a confession. I know you've been hiding it for a long time, but we all know you've got a whole bunch. So now is the time to confess. Confessions@bbc.co.uk, or you can go via the website. Thank you.